Crash Bandicoot. The colorful game starring
A pair of fuzzy marsupials.
Yep, that's the one. Without a doubt, the series has garnered its reputation thanks to its unique blend of box-breaking, boulder-chasing, hog-riding, butt-spanking gameplay. Okay, maybe not so much on that last one, unless, you're into that, in which case, you do you. But for me, it's the Bandicoot's bad guys that stand out the most. I've replayed these boss fights more than any other level in the series. If they feature an interesting character, have good music, or fun mechanics to play with, then I love it, regardless of the level of difficulty. Now I know several of the villains have had good fights in more than a single game, but I'm only sticking to one fight per character for this list in order to keep me from sounding too samey. I've also added some of my honorable mentions to the description if you want to check it out. And lastly, just try to bear in mind that this list is just for fun. We all have our reasons for our choices, and yours are welcome if you want to share them. I went through a lot of back and forth on this list, and I'm not going to do it no more. So now it's time to look at the 10 best of Crash's bashes, in my opinion. Hopping into the number 10 spot is Ripperoo from Crash Bandicoot. Honestly, Ripperoo is an absolute blast in every game that he's appeared in, but I can admit he's never really been much of a threat outside of his cart. I do love the whole Jekyll and Hyde idea from Crash 2, in fact I think it's a better fight than both the Komodo Bros and the final battle with Cortex, but once you figured out the method to all the madness, you could just casually stroll around the library while the Blue Roo does your work for you and just blows himself to Kingdom Come. Nothing too difficult there. But in Crash 1, it required a bit more thought put into it, because you're not simply just avoiding Ripperoo. You also need to watch out for the rapids in between the tiles and the TNT crates that you're attempting to use against him. With him constantly on the move, you need to time your jumps in the hopes that he will be near the explosion when it goes off, and then just praying you don't miss the window to attack him. Or for that matter, that the current doesn't carry the box further down the river from where you wanted it. There's certainly a lot of moving parts in this fight, and maybe that's why I like it. With Roo mixing up his jump pattern each time you land a successful attack on him, you need to adapt pretty quickly if you don't want to be trampled. But hey, if you can do this just a few times, then the blue bombing cackling crazy will be all washed up. I know it's not the most difficult fight, but I do appreciate the strategy element to it, and Ripperoo is tied for my favorite character in the franchise, so I definitely wanted to include him on here. But hey, if that's not enough, then I think we can at least agree it's a massive step up from Papu Papu, right? Although, come to think of it, if I were sound asleep and some giant orange rat with jorts and sneakers broke into my house, and then I suddenly had to fight him all groggy like that? Shoot, I'd be a pushover too. Maybe we've been too hard on the big guy for all these years. Honestly, now I just feel bad. Counting down to number 9 is Entropy from Crash Bandicoot Warped.
Now you're on my time, you little skunk! Give me the crystals!
So by this point in the series, Crash had gotten pretty good at beating mad scientists, so when Uka Uka was introduced in Crash 3 as the new big bad, he brought someone a little different with him this time. A steampunk time wizard that looks like Jafar and Clockwork used a Patara fusion, which, not gonna lie, is really cool. But despite all the abilities that this Master of Time has, he's actually a pretty straightforward fight. Using his tuning fork, he can shoot fireballs that chase after you or create an electric current that travels across the floor. Depending on which one he uses, you'll either need to dodge or jump around his magic until he runs out of energy. This will create a randomly generated set of platforms for you to cross over to him so you can finally clean this guy's clock. Entropy will then teleport the pair to another place in time to try again, first warping to ancient China and then finishing the fight in the Middle East, gradually throwing out more and more attacks each round before he runs out of steam. So just continue to dodge his balls and jump his walls until his time is up and he'll tick his last talk. All in all, making for a pretty good fight, with catchy music and some interesting visuals thanks to all the warping around. But I gotta admit, as the creator of the Time Twister machine, effectively making Entropy the sole reason that the game's plot could happen in the first place, I kinda feel like he got gypped and should have been fought later on. But hey, I guess time waits for no man, right? Even him. Sorry, Uka Uka, looks like you're gonna need a new watch, man.
You insignificant morons! By defeating Entropy, you have placed us all in grave danger!
Psh, it's just messing with time. How bad can that be? Why do they all look like... Never mind, I don't think I want to know. Zipping into number 8 are the Evil Twins, the final bosses of Crash Twinsanity. We've definitely made our way through a lot of unexpected and insane things to battle these birds. Some high-sea hijinks, evil private schools, dealt with a doppelganger, Spyro torched a third of my top 10, and a horde of angry penguins.
Fish?
But all of it is built up to this moment. It's finally time to play with Victor and Moritz. Their cage transforms into a giant robot, their incredible theme music begins to play, and now it's on like Koala Kong. Crash runs off to who knows where, leaving Nina and Cortex to hold off the birdbot. Starting with Nina, you need to avoid the swarms of ants and grapple your way up these hooks in order to destroy the generators on top that are powering the robot's legs, giving Cortex the opportunity to step in and destroy all the weapons off this metal monstrosity using his blaster, which will manage to buy enough time for Crash to make his epic return. And he's got the Mecha Bandicoot? N.Gin's mech that we trashed at the beginning of the game? What is it even doing here? How did it get repaired? Last time we saw it, it was just a pile of scrap in some cave, so how?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Well, I guess everybody's getting a giant robot out of nowhere in this fight, but hey, it's here, and we're gonna use it to bomb these birds into another dimension. Or at least, that was the plan, until they ran away. Really, guys? Did you just forget about all your psychic powers? I'm pretty sure you could kill us without even trying, so come on, we deserve a real ending. Thought you were parrots, not chickens, so come back and get your just desserts. Oh wait, I guess you guys are the desserts, huh? Yikes, what a way to go. So up next at number 7 is Tony Tiger from wait, Tony Tiger. I'm so stupid.
There, girl, right.
So my number 7 is Tiny Tiger, but it was actually pretty hard to decide which one was the best fight for me. I have a lot of personal nostalgia for Crash 3 Tiny because it was the game I was introduced to him, and this gladiator fight definitely made for a great first impression. The crowds in the Coliseum cheering, Cortex watching the carnage from above, Tiny tearing through the stone columns, the man-eating lions, the food flinging. Honestly, it never gets old to me. I love it. Probably my favorite of the first fights. But watching this beast of a boss make his big entrance by ripping open a giant steel door with his bare hands was pretty intimidating to me as a kid, and Tiny isn't quite as predictable or easy to cheese compared to Crash 3, even if the fight itself is just a glorified game of hopscotch. You'll have to keep moving from platform to platform while Tiny follows you wherever you go, even jumping diagonally if Crash gets too far ahead of him. If you don't want to be crushed like a little bandybug, then you need to outsmart him, which fortunately is not very hard. You have to keep an eye out for the flashing red platforms or other open areas and figure out how to bait Tiny into jumping over them to drop him into the abyss below. Then quickly find a way to get yourself to safety to avoid the other platforms tumbling down afterwards. If you want to stay alive above the bottomless pit, then you need to think a few steps ahead at all times so that you never cut off your own escape. But sometimes this is easier said than done, because more and more platforms will begin to tumble down as Tiny's health does. And even at the end of the fight, if you manage to beat this bruiser, you're not guaranteed the win. There's still one last drop to survive, and they're all going down except for one. It's a great way to end this fight. Props to Naughty Dog for giving Tiny such consistently good battles. You need to take notes, Activision. I don't want to see any more of that Mike Tyson Tiny ever again. Speeding into the 6th spot on my list is Pinstripe Potoroo from Crash Team Racing.
What, you call that racing? Forget about it. If you's gonna race Oxide, you's gonna have to get past me first.
You know, whenever I thought back on CTR, I remembered Nitrous Oxide being the best boss in this game. But when I went back through the adventure mode after Nitro Field was first announced, and then again after the game was released, to my surprise, I ended up getting destroyed by Pinstripe again and again in both playthroughs, just to go on and beat Oxide on my very first try. Plus, he cheats. Can't exactly consider him the best at what he does when he has to do that to win. So enjoy the honorable mentions. Now, back to Pinstripe. The Don was always a fun boss in the original Crash Bandicoot, but he was a little too simple to make my list. But as a racer, this Mafia man is the top dog. Unlike all the previous bosses that use small trap weapons like potions or TNT crates, Pinstripe is packing unlimited bowling bombs that will continue to roll across the track well after he's left the area. Nowhere here is safe. If you somehow manage to get ahead of him, you have a few precious seconds before he makes up the difference. There's almost never any time to react, and he's definitely a fan of hitting you with a bomb that will toss you off the skyway. It makes earning this key an extremely punishing but super rewarding experience to finally earn, and I have to give props to the Nitro Field developers for breathing new life into these boss scenes and the tracks themselves. Hot Air Skyway was always my favorite course in the original game, and now getting to go against my favorite racer on this gorgeously reimagined casino in the clouds was a real treat that fully brought out all of Pinstripe's Tommy gun toting gangster flair. Just don't get me started on the whole hard mode thing. I don't want to talk about it. Kicking off my top 5 is Dr. Nitrous Brio from Crash Bandicoot. Poor guy, it's a real shame he doesn't get more recognition after Crash 1 because, honestly, he steals the show in every scene he's in. Well, except for Twinsanity, I suppose, but hey, it could have been much worse. Now, his original fight in Classic Crash was already pretty good, but the SaneTrilogy managed to take it just a step further to not only add a bit of extra challenge, but also clear up a few oddities along the way. It was never really made very clear on how the blobs were hurting Brio in the original game, so by making them immune to the spin attack, it forces you to jump on the blobs in order to damage him, which is a nice touch that helps add a bit to the fight, making the most out of Crash's limited moveset, especially when the screen starts to fill with the slimes and exploding purple potions. But of course, this isn't even his final form. After taking enough damage, he throws all caution to the wind and drinks his potions instead, transforming into a giant hulking beast that will smash everything up, breaking off chunks of the ceiling that Crash needs to climb up to bounce off this Jolly Green Giant's head a few times, something that was also made harder for the SaneTrilogy to finally finish him off and send him flying. I love this fight. I definitely feel that it's the best of the first game, and would love to see more of Brio in the future, even if I personally think he might be pushing his luck a little bit. I mean, did he just forget that those potions explode? This could have gone very differently.
This isn't the end. I invented endings.
Well, here they are. My number 4 spot goes to our 2 big bad bosses, Dr. Cortex and Uka Uka from Crash Bandicoot Warped. Wait, I can do better. Crash Bandicoot Warped! Yeah, that's more like it. It would just feel wrong to have a top 10 list and not have this one near the top. It's the grand finale of Naughty Dog's trilogy, and they made certain that our nemesis went out in a big way. Throughout this entire game, Cortex has been extremely cocky and aloof. He's confident that by teaming up with Uka Uka, he can finally crush that pesky Bandicoot once and for all. So with that iconic theme music setting up the mood perfectly for this final showdown, Cortex, Crash, and their 2 masks are about to decide the fate of it all. Now, compared to his original battle in Crash 1, Cortex isn't nearly as aggressive here as he was back then, but that doesn't make things any safer for you either. There's not only the classic plasma blasts or the new mines that are thrown out between each round to be concerned with. You've also got the masks and their ongoing beam struggles, death tornadoes, or spiral explosions that you'll need to survive until Cortex's equipment goes on the fritz, losing his shield and leaving him open to spin into the space hole to deal some damage. It's ballistic, kinetic action that keeps you on your toes the entire way through, and not having Aku Aku to come in and save you if you screw up only further adds to the tension. It was a really cool decision to get our Guardian Mask in on all the action to take down his evil brother. It really helps sell the feeling of this is it, the ultimate battle between good and evil where the stakes have never felt higher. And having the alternate cutscenes for collecting all the gems was a really nice choice that motivates you to go back and finish the fight right. As for Cortex, he may take a bit of a back seat here, but there's still no doubt in my mind that this is the best final boss battle in the Bandicoot's history, and the perfect send-off to Naughty Dog's original trilogy. Rounding out the bottom of my top 3 is Entranced from Crash Bandicoot 2 Entranced. For those of you who haven't picked up on the GBA Crash games yet, you're missing out on some good 2D fun. I only picked up on this game for the first time fairly recently, and I gotta say, I was genuinely surprised that a boss on a GBA game of all things could have so much going on in it despite the limited hardware. Actually, come to think of it, most of these bosses were pretty good. Evil Crunch might have been a complete joke, but Evil Coco in particular was really out to get me. I mean, just look at her. Does that look like the face of Mercy to you? Because it doesn't to me. Ah! And despite that he was a complete joke character, they even had a pretty unique idea for a mirror match using Fake Crash. Unfortunately, it's a super quick and easy one. But if you don't want a boss that's over easy, then who better to turn to than the Eggman himself? In this two-phase fight, we start off with a mix of avoiding his random jumps and extendable clock arm, and then go in to scramble him whenever he gets the thing stuck. Then immediately followed up on riding on a helicopter pack for the second phase, avoiding Entrance's different bullet hell barrage attacks and other status-inflicting moves while you're trying to spin him into the chamber below in order to dump a load of lava on his head, all thanks to the recently rescued Fake Crash. It's nice to see him getting an important role in one of these stories for a change, but hard-boiling Humpty Dumpty still isn't going to come easy. He has a ton of health that you need to chip through, and sometimes spinning can cause him to go bouncing off the walls instead of going down into the lava lounge, leaving more time for dodging his crazy moves in the slow-moving copter. Vicarious Visions took a big risk introducing a brand new character to be the primary villain, but I'm happy to see that they pulled it off. It's a very impressive fight with a lot of moving parts, and it's handed me my Blue Bandicoot butt more than any other boss on this list, making him more than worthy for my number 3 spot. Now that that's out of the way, who's hungry? Out of all the fights on this list, N.Gin's Battle on the Moon from Crash 3 stands out the most from the rest of its peers. Vehicle-based battles aren't something that the series has always handled with the most grace. Actually, neither have space battles for that matter. So it's a nice change of pace to see that N.Gin has that grace covered and more. He's certainly had his fair share of great battles throughout this series, both before and after this one, even inspiring the awesome Electric Genie Cloud Crunch fight from Wrath of Cortex. But this one is certainly the best of the bunch, and thankfully there's no annoying wind spirit to bother us here.
Is there a draft in here?
Thank goodness. Now, Crash 3 introduced a variety of different vehicle-based levels to play and mostly enjoy, so it seems only fitting to include a boss fight in that as well. Getting to play as Coco for the first and only time in a main series boss fight was a welcome change, as we pit our tiny little pink ship against N.Gin's latest and greatest creation for a fast, crazy, high-flying dogfight in space, which honestly would feel at home in any Star Fox game, complete with health bars, glowing weak spots, and a lot of risk versus reward style play as you duck and dive around a nearly endless barrage of bullets and missiles to try to deal damage whenever possible. Then as the sparks and explosions begin to die down from N.Gin's growing lack of working weaponry, the Metalhead minion switches things up with a surprise second form to continue the fight. Now armed to the teeth with plasma cannons and even more health than before. But Coco adds some extra firepower of her own, calling in Pura the Tiger to come in and plug in his kitten cannon to really take it to this maniacal missile man one last time, earning another win for Team Bandicoot and sending Team Rocket blasting off again. We're finally here, guys. My number 1 favorite boss fight from all of the Crash Bandicoot series is Dingodile from Twinsanity. Yes, I know that Crash 3's Dingodile fight is amazing. Believe me, I do. I played this boss fight so many times over the years that I could beat him with my eyes closed. In fact, I have. Several times, actually. But with only 1 fight allowed per character, I just couldn't do it. Twinsanity stands as my favorite Crash game, and though it does have its share of flaws, I'm happy to say that this game does him right. Dingodile is tied with Ripperoo as my favorite character in this franchise, and I love everything about this rendition of the character. From his design to his voice, and even the journey that you have to reach to get to him. The Rube Goldberg sewer puzzles were very inventive and unique. But what really puts him above all the others on my list is his ability to learn and adapt. Dingodile is pulling out all of the stops here. Each time that he's tricked into activating the emergency sprinklers that douse the ring of fire protecting him, he uses a new pattern of attacks to help ensure that it won't happen again. He shoots fireballs into the air, alternates between higher and lower streams of flames that sometimes chase after you and other times randomly change direction mid-attack, and firewalls that almost make you feel like he's reading your mind sometimes with how quickly he changes his own. Which of course just makes it all the more satisfying when you finally beat the heat and send this crocodile down under. As far as I can recall, no other boss in any Crash game even tries to attempt anything like this. They all simply loop the same attacks until it's time to lose a health bar. Or in the case of someone that changes forms like Brio, N.Gin, or Entrance, they get new attacks from that, yes, but then they'll just repeat those moves instead. Here, Dingodile's aggressive strategy is deadly and cunning. His music is hellish, and it all makes for the most unique experience that I've ever had in a Crash game. And that is why Dingodile is my favorite boss battle of the Crash Bandicoot series. Whew. Well, that was a long video. So I wanted to thank you for sticking with it all the way until the end. It really means a lot. This video was supposed to be out much earlier than what it did, but I'm really happy to finally have it done. If you enjoyed what you saw, then you know what to do.
Give me the goods and shove off, or I'll roast you.
Wow. I'm really sorry about him. That's not how I would have asked, but please do as he says. He's looking like he's got an itchy trigger finger. But before you go, I'd like you to vote on what top 10 you'd like to see me cover next. A video of my top 10 favorite Spyro levels, or a list of my most wanted characters for Super Smash Bros., which you can bet will feature our favorite Bandicoots there as well. Comment down below and let me know. I hope to see you all then! Not cool, man. Not cool.